Hello and welcome to the Counterpoint podcast. My name is Peter Richardson and I will be your host today. Today we're going to be talking about eSIMs or embedded SIMs, and I'm joined by two colleagues. So we have Karan Desai. Hello, Karan. How are you today?
I'm good, Peter. How are you?
Yeah, very well, very well. And my fellow research director, Neil Shah. Hi, Neil. How are you doing?
I am doing great as always.
Good. Glad to hear it, Neil. Glad to hear it. We are, of course, as usual, recording this from various places around the world, so forgive any noises off. But we're going to be talking, as I say, about the embedded SIM and how that's developing. Now, the eSIM has been around for actually about 10 years now. But I can remember a time, I've been around quite a long time in the telecoms industry, and I can remember a time before SIM cards when this is in the analog days when it was a quite complex process to combine a telephone number with a piece of equipment. And the emergence of the SIM, which really came in with GSM now 30 years ago, transformed that. So suddenly your telephone number and your subscriber identity was on a device that was a bit like a credit card, and you slotted that into the phone and the phone became yours. But the SIM card has transformed over the years, getting smaller. Obviously, the credit card size is pretty difficult to manage in a small device, so that SIM has become much smaller. But now we've reached a point where it is almost being dematerialized and embedded in the equipment. And having a SIM card has been fine when you're using a smartphone, but if you're talking about connecting a water meter or utility meter or a drone or even a car, having a physical SIM is actually a bit more difficult to manage. So taking the functionality of the SIM and putting it into some other format creates a much more usable piece of equipment. So maybe we can start off, guys, by talking about this transition from a physical SIM card to something else. So, Karen, maybe I can ask you to kick us off here. So, can you talk about some of the differences between the physical SIM and then taking that functionality, putting into other formats? So, I think this is where a lot of people get confused, right? So we have the eSIM and then iSIM or soft SIM. So, can you briefly kind of explain what the differences are between these different things?
Sure, Peter. Like you said, Peter, like we're all familiar with the SIM card that we have to pop out from a previous phone and insert into the new one to get connectivity. Something that we used to do, or still, are still used to doing in a lot of countries. The eSIM is different, though. As the name suggests, the eSIM is built into the phone's board. It's completely rewritable, and it works with like literally all the leading carriers these days. And we have eSIMs in a wide range of consumer products now. You talk about smartphones, wearables to laptops. Now we also have B2B IoT devices such as smart meters, medical IoT devices, home automation and security systems, connected cars, and asset trackers. That support eSIM functionality. Uh, there are a few differences, though, as we've captured rightly in our report. We've featured three types of eSIMs. That's the eSIM, that's the embedded SIM. The iSIM, which is called the integrated SIM, and the third category is the soft SIM. Uh, in terms of the differences between these three, eSIM and iSIM have a similar philosophy in terms of taking the chip and its credentials from an insertable SIM card to the PCB of the product itself. There's a slight difference here, though. In case of an eSIM, the chip is soldered onto the board, whereas if we talk about an iSIM, it goes a stage further, and it is integrated into the silicon design of an SoC.
So if I can just jump in there, so just clarify. So in the eSIM, we're talking about taking the physical elements that would otherwise be in the SIM card and I say but soldering those onto the board in some way. But within the iSIM, the same functionality is then uh, ingested into the silicon itself.
goes into the system on chip.
Okay. And then soft SIM.
Yeah. So software-based SIM is where the SIM software is baked into the TEE, or what we call the trusted execution environment, or the SoC within the device. This concept is also gaining a lot of popularity due to the obvious cost, manufacturing, and logistical benefits. You hear of companies such as Red T-Mobile, GigSky, that are partnering with OEMs, operators across the world, and chipset vendors to drive eSIM capabilities at the core software level.
Okay. So what are the different benefits of eSIM versus iSIM versus soft SIM, and why are they better than physical SIMs? Um, maybe you can talk a bit about that.
I think if we are to look at the benefits, I think we should split the benefits across the value chain in terms of how the new SIM concept or the eSIM concept benefits the consumers, designers, and the mobile network operators differently. If we talk about the consumers first, eSIM offers great flexibility in terms of accessing services seamlessly and securely as well. Uh, at the same time, it offers time and cost savings associated with in-store provisioning or activation processes, for which you have to travel as well, and waste a lot of time too. Uh, and like I said previously, since the eSIM is rewritable, the end users can also pick up a local prepaid phone number when they're traveling to a different country, and avoid very hefty premium roaming fees. So that's for the consumers. And if we come to designers now, the obvious benefits of eSIMs are the cost and space savings that it enables. It offers features like thinner, smaller, and more power sensitive device form factors. So the new devices are essentially very small and cheap as well. uh, for carriers, eSIM is extending mobile connectivity to a whole new ecosystem of consumer connected devices. So there are a lot of new business opportunities over there.
Okay. So Neil, can I bring you in to also talk about some of the maybe the disbenefits, and certainly in my discussions with different industry players, the mobile operators have perhaps been dragging their feet a bit, if I can put it like that, or at least reluctant to move, because they I think see the SIM card as a kind of key point of leverage or a point of power in the relationship between the consumer and themselves. I think they understand very clearly in a IoT situation, utility meter, that the SIM, the physical SIM is not really very helpful in that context. But within the smartphone space, how are they thinking about the benefits and risks of moving to embedded SIMs?
Yeah, so embedded SIM has been a really a disruptive concept for everyone in the ecosystem, as Karan said, right from component players contributing to mobile device manufacturers, operators, as well as even cloud players who are going to manage all these different data points and activation settings, device management settings in the cloud, and providing services to operators. So for operators, as you rightly said, so they enjoy the control over the SIM card, and they have been enjoying the secure element which is in the device, which actually which they are offering, and they can control it because if you want to switch carriers, you have to obviously in some countries void the contract, or wait the contract to be finished and then move on to a different carrier. Uh, but in many prepaid markets, right, operators are very reluctant because uh, with eSIM, the level of switching becomes seamless. It's very quick. So the churn rate could be very high very quickly. And there are not many loose ends left for operators to make that stop. So that flexibility is something what operators have been trading about. And this is true mostly for smartphones, which have been the higher ARPU devices for operators or smartphone connections rather. So if you look at IoT, for IoT, actually operators are very pro eSIM. They want eSIM because, as you said, if there are like 10,000 water meters out in the wild, they can't send the different people to just change the SIM cards or activate the devices. So it has to be done remotely to save activation cost. So for those kind of devices, operators are very pro eSIM. And what has happened also is many operators are also seeing an opportunity. While eSIM provides the flexibility to have multiple profiles, operator profiles on the device or on the eSIM, but some of the operators are actually just locking the eSIM as well. So it can only allow one particular operator's profile. So especially for IoT devices, because anyways they don't roam much, but in many cases we are seeing that happening as well. So operators have some amount of control still with the eSIM, especially in IoT space. But for smartphone, where a consumer is also having some control on what to choose, what not to choose, for them, they don't want to cede that control away from consumers.
Thanks, Neil. So, thinking about the impact of the design of the smartphone, if we look at smartphones for a minute, um, what impacts can there be on the bill of material cost for smartphone designers when they're thinking about designing in an eSIM world versus a physical SIM world?
That's a great question, and I think that is one of the biggest benefit which eSIM brings. The traditional eSIM form factor, which is the eSIM chip, which is in a MFF2 form factor, which is like 5 millimeter into 6 millimeter area, basically. So like 30 millimeter square. It's a very tiny chip, and it helps designers save a lot of board space, especially that a huge slot you have for SIM card these days, right? So that is completely gone. For example, Motorola launched their Razr in 2020 edition. It was the first eSIM only smartphone in the world, no physical slot. So with foldable form factors coming in, and you're going to have a lot of design challenges. I think eSIM comes to the party and saves designers a lot of space, a lot of cost. They can add bigger batteries. They can add more waterproofing, IP68 rigid ice ratings, capabilities to the device. And if you look at from the bill of materials, there are while the particular MFF2 based form factor could cost anywhere from €1, but there are different form factors like WLCS, wafer level chipset packaging. Those are even tinier, which does not require more memory. In those scenarios, you will have even smaller chip. And then when you move to integrated SIM world, where the EUICC or the IUICC, that is the OS, the eSIM OS, is stored within the secure processing unit in your SoC, which is the application processor. So in that scenarios, you don't need any soldered chip onto your board. So it's like 100% savings, and it becomes even more inexpensive because it is directly into the SoC. So in that case, you'll eventually the entire industry can save a lot of cost, and can add a lot of different features in lieu of no SIM card.
And I guess beyond even the space saving aspect, even having the physical SIM tray, which you need to find a position for, and have a cutout in the side of the phone. So even not having that element can really assist in terms of the product design.
Absolutely, because if we are moving into a millimeter wave based 5G world, placing the antenna is the biggest challenge. The antenna modules, right? So any space which they can get to position those modules where you accidentally don't cover the antenna modules, right? It's going to be a huge benefit.
Yeah, and I think if we look at the specific manufacturers that have been leading the charge here, uh, Apple is I guess the poster child for the introduction of eSIM. Apple has been a leader, I think, in many aspects of product design. From taking away the headphone jack and things like that. So we saw Apple really kind of being the first, but Google with its Pixel range has followed, and then Samsung has enabled eSIM functionality as well on some of its newer flagship products. But quite often these devices are offering some level of kind of dual SIM functionality, so they're retaining the physical SIM but also offering an eSIM. So how long should we, or over what timeline should we expect eSIM to filter down into down the range of products and become much more widely available, in your view, Neil?
Yeah, I think it's a function of different markets. Not all markets are as advanced. Still, we see many operators. We have like thousands of operators, if you include MNOs, MVNOs, globally. And maybe in some advanced markets, you could see some SKUs would be just eSIM only, like Moto Razr, as I said, in 2020 is the first eSIM only phone. And as you go with newer form factors like foldable phones, I see this happening more and more in future. But down to mainstream and mass market level, I would say at least mainstream level where you see phones in high tier and premium tier, we could see by 2025, once the introduction of integrated SIM comes in, we could see many bulk of those phones in those price segment would do away with a physical tray SIM card.
Okay. You mentioned earlier about the complexities of designing for millimeter wave. So does the shift to 5G and perhaps in in the IoT world, things like NB-IoT, is is that a driver to push the adoption of eSIM more generally? I mean, maybe you can talk a little bit about the what our expectations are in terms of the devices out there that have eSIM capability, as part of this. So, are we kind of close to that inflection point, or is it going to be a fairly kind of long, drawn out, kind of takeoff here? Do you think?
That's a great question. So, if you look at every device segment, even if you consider vehicle or connected car as a device, which is a connected device, right, in a sense. So, we are seeing the highest adoption right now for eSIM is in vehicles. So, most of the cars connected are now coming up with eSIM-based modules and TCUs. They're hardly. It's very difficult to open a car and put a SIM card, right? So eSIM functionality, especially in Europe, where there are hardly any borders where you can just travel across, and you have those roaming agreements, and the car, if it is connected, it needs to seamlessly switch, right? So we are seeing very high adoption, almost 70 to 80% level adoption of eSIM already in vehicles. When you move to IoT also is driven by a lot of modules, all IoT modules, and those IoT modules are also become having a lot of cost pressures, especially for LPWA, low power wireless access type modules, which is, as you rightly mentioned, NB-IoT, LTEM, Cat1, all those kind of different modules. There is huge cost pressure to bring the module prices under $5. And for that, if the module price is under $5, then you are not going to pay $1 for a huge slot, or even a physical eSIM, right? So we are seeing a lot of adoption of iSIM based solution, integrated SIM based solution already within the IoT world. So it has gone one step ahead, even skipping eSIM in many cases. That is an embedded chipset based SIM. So those are the areas. IoT, then you would say smartwatch also is one of the segment which by de facto all the cellular smartwatch, we are seeing almost 80 to 90% of the smartwatches are already eSIM capable, and eSIM is being used because the form factor is also very small. The only lagging segment is right now smartphone, but this is growing fast as well. Compared to other segments, we are seeing already greater adoption of embedded SIM and iSIM.
Thanks, Neil. So, turning our attention to the way in which eSIMs are being enabled within the network. So, we have a number of players in the in the eSIM ecosystem. Many of those have come from the traditional kind of SIM card background, but we have new players as well. So, Karen, can you talk about who are some of the leaders in the eSIM space at the moment, and what they bring to the party?
Sure. Sure. Thanks, Peter. So there are two ways in which we look at the eSIM ecosystem. One aspect is the eSIM enablement bit, and the other aspect is eSIM management. Uh, so there are a number of players that cut across both of these categories and have end-to-end solutions. So I'll talk about the enablement side first. So like last year, we have the two usual suspects, Thales and GND, that are leading the eSIM enablement space, along with players such as IDEMIA and Valid. And a few things that set them apart from the competition are obviously the fact that they have robust eSIM enablement capabilities, along with having their own embedded secure elements and EUICC and IUICC operating systems, which they've developed for consumer, automotive, and IoT applications. So, these are some of the things that differentiate these top four players from the lot. And if we talk about the overall leader in eSIM enablement for this year, it's Thales. Because it scores very well across different parameters, which we use to assess all of the ecosystem players. A few things that I'd like to mention about what Thales has done differently is, obviously it has 4 GSMA SAS certified sites for EUICC production, and Thales has also established a very strong consumer eSIM offerings, enabling smartphones, tablets, PCs, smartwatches for all the major brands, from Samsung to Microsoft and Motorola as well. It is also amongst the leaders in supporting many eSIM-enabled industrial IoT applications. If we talk about energy and utilities, security and home automation, asset tracking, and point of sales terminals.
Okay, thanks, Karen. That's helpful. And I would just say that to do a bit of advertising here. So Counterpoint has been tracking the eSIM space for several years, and we're just in the process of publishing our latest update on this. And it's a super comprehensive report that runs across the whole kind of end-to-end space. So and Karen's been leading a lot of the research there. So if you do want to know more about this, please do contact us, and we'll be happy to talk you through. But just before we wrap up, Karen, looking ahead, maybe a kind of a future-looking thought on how we see eSIM and iSIM gaining traction here over the next few years. How would you like to kind of summarize that?
Sure. So, as you know, Peter, GSMA has not yet defined the iSIM from a security and remote provisioning perspective. This is still a major barrier for iSIM's adoption at a larger scale, but we do expect the iSIM to be implemented widely starting 2022. And players like ARM and Qualcomm and some of the other big MNOs that have already taken big strides towards iSIM would be the ones that would be driving it. And if iSIM is standardized in, let's say, the next 2 years or so, we should see a rapid adoption and tough competition to for the hardware-based eSIM category in probably the next 5 years. Considering the convenience, cost, and board savings that iSIM offers over the eSIM.
All right. So a good point, I think, on which to wrap up. So, yeah, thanks, Karen. Thanks, Neil, for joining us today.
Appreciate it, Peter.
Thank you very much.
All right. And everyone else, if as I say, if you do want to learn more about the overall kind of eSIM ecosystem, please do get in contact with us. We have a fantastic report on which you can dig into many of these details. And do tune in next time for the next Counterpoint podcast. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye now.